Hey everybody, this is D Hunter, bringing another action figure review. Today, we're going to look at the McFarlane Spawn Kickstarter Spawn. Now this is not the new medieval Kickstarter Spawn, but this is the one from several years ago. When this first came out, it was sort of kickstarting or testing the waters to see if people wanted a modern Spawn line. And it was successful, and they made the modern Spawn line, which does seem to be kind of dwindling down at this point. Now when this first came out, I thought to myself, Todd McFarlane doing a Kickstarter? Fuck that. That's a big company. I don't want to be doing a Kickstarter. That's so dumb. And I came to regret it because the Spawn figure looks really cool, but I've never had him in hand, so I don't really know everything about it. Heard the articulation is not that good. Now, cool story about this thing. Had a chance to get this very recently. Now, these things are selling for $350 to $450 on eBay. And I don't mean that's the asking price. They're actually selling for that much. Huge shout out to my boy Carl for bringing this to my attention. He messaged me and said, hey, do you have the Kickstarter Spawn? I was like, no. Always wanted to get one, thinking, I don't know, maybe he had an extra one he was going to offer me, who knows what. And he brought to my attention that at the McFarlane toy store, there's a reward program, and I never really looked too much into it. They had some stuff like prototypes or $10 off your next order, and didn't really interest me too much. Those prototypes are grossly, I don't want to say overpriced because they don't cost anything, but they require like 20,000 points, which is a lot, and they don't do anything for me. Those are just dumb, half-painted, loose figures. They're meaningless to me. Though he told me they had the Kickstarter Spawn on there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it was like 1,250 points. I had like 2,000 or 2,200 points, so used a little bit more than half my points, and that's just fine. This is something I wanted for a long time. And it's extremely expensive on eBay, and I got it for free. Yes, free. I had to pay $24 shipping, and my God, the box was massive. We have 3 different figures here. One is a regular Spawn, one is an Unmasked Spawn, and one is an Unpainted artist-proof Spawn. Absolutely free. That is absolutely fantastic. And to make it even cooler, as soon as I redeemed my points and got it, bam, that was it. They only had one. So super, super cool. I never would have probably looked at that myself. So like I said, huge shout out to my boy Carl for bringing this to my attention. It now allows me to complete the Spawn line in its entirety. So let's take a quick look at the packaging. And the packaging is very bland, at least so far. As you can see, it's a Spawn in green lettering. That one's in red, that one's in gray. If we go further down, the bottom one is slightly different. At the top, I have the McFarlane Spawn logo. One side, Spawn, back is blank. Other side is blank. This came out, I would assume, in 2021 based off this. And this is how long, I guess, McFarlane Toys has been operating. They're celebrating their 30th year right now in 2024. At the bottom, there is a barcode. They're probably all 3 different, and it's not going to really help anybody. Ages 14 plus, this is not a toy. There are 3 of these guys. They're all in deluxe packaging. You can slide the outer sleeve off, exposing really nothing inside. It has this little sort of, I don't know, ribbon or whatever. Use that to open up the figures. And bam, very impressive package. Very nicely done. Here's Spawn. This one has an alternate unmasked head. I thought it was just an unmasked Spawn, so it's even cooler. Guns, energy effects. Very, very cool. So no further ado, let's open them all up and see what they're about. 3 years too late, but happy to add them to the collection. And there's some pretty cool, interesting stuff that came in the package. We have this Masterworks Certificate of Authenticity. Very cool. And we also have this sort of checklist. It's a comparison checklist. The original 94 Spawn next to the remastered 7-inch scale from 2021. Going over the different points of articulation, weapons, chains, cape, comic, packaging, box, signature, and accessories. Very cool. Alright, now that these figures out of the package, here they are with all their accessories laid out, and holy shit fuck, I am just in awe. This thing is magnificent. The packaging was great, the figures are giant, capes are huge, just like Spawn should be. I'd read so many negative things about this Kickstarter. The figures like statues have no articulation, the cape sucks, and I mean, there's some validity to a little bit of that. But they have way more articulation than I expected, and it's fairly in line with the modern figures. The capes are giant and seem very restricting. The accessories are just decked out. And I thought it was 3 of the same Spawn figures in the exact same costume, and that is not the case. There are some paint and even sculpting differences on these figures. I thought it was just going to be the regular one, the Unmasked one, and the Unpainted one. But it said it's so much more than this. Man, if you're a huge Spawn fan and you missed this, man, it's almost worth the $400. This thing is just fantastic. We have 3 Spawn comics, each showing the figure that they represent. We have an actual autographed little signed plate thing, Todd McFarlane. Each of the figures has a display stand, 6 hands, multiple heads, tons of weapons and energy effects. The cape's articulated, they have real chains. These figures are just amazing. This thing broke records with Kickstarters, at least 2 different records, sold millions, or made millions, whatever. This is why we have the modern Spawn line today. When Todd McFarlane was successful with DC Multiverse, he tested the waters to see if anyone wanted Spawn figures. And they damn sure did. I remember the Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn. They have this Kickstarter Spawn, and eventually they made their own 7-inch Spawn line, which unfortunately does seem to be running out of steam. Now, there were 3 things I was thinking about when opening the package. Wow, this is fucking awesome is the main one. Number 2, I got this for free, didn't pay anything for it, and these are things I would have bought for the McFarlane Toy Store anyway. It's not like I'm buying these things to get the points. The points are just extra. And my god, they need to do a Batman set like this with a giant plastic articulated cape, different versions from different comics. That could be such a cool collector's item. In this video, we're going to take a look at each of the figures one by one. We'll check out their accessories, height, and articulation, and we'll compare them with a bunch of other action figures. So let's start off with the main one, the OG Spawn. Before we look at the OG Spawn, let's check out some of the non-figure specific accessories. There are 3 different comics here. I actually kept them in the cardboard that was in the back of the packaging, but the comic itself slides out very easily. I think I'll keep him in the sleeve for now. You can see Spawn in his OG outfit, looking fantastic. The next one here is Spawn in a more modern outfit. You can see a lot less red around the chest area. And then, of course, we have this artist-proof sketch version of Spawn. Just another little bonus added with this set. Then we have this nameplate, and it's actually signed by Todd McFarlane. You can tell that is not printed. Definitely signed with a marker. Very cool. I'll definitely put this on my comic book shelf with all my unopened McFarlane figures. And then we have these 3 McFarlane display stands. Now, the figure doesn't really need the display stands. The cape is made of hard plastic and is so big, it really helps support. It makes it really hard to knock the figure over. But we have 3 of these anyway. Typical McFarlane display stand we've seen a bunch of times before. Spawn from 94 to 2021. Record-setting action figure. Very thin. And finally, onto the figures. Here is the original OG Spawn. He's in his original outfit, a lot of red, a lot of black, some white, skulls, chains, giant cape. Fantastic. Ton of accessories, 2 weapons, 2 energy effects, 6 hands, alternate head. Let's take a look. So it's not perfect, there are some flaws, but the figure is damn nice. I like it a lot. I think to myself, like the Crocodile Dundee movie, that's a knife. Nah, this is a knife. It's like, here's my Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn figure. Yeah, that's a Spawn figure. This is a Spawn figure. So, one noticeable thing, he's got this gap below his neck, but I'm sure you can sort of, honestly, it only seems to get worse, but it's not that bad. Face itself, it looks good. It looks very good. I would prefer to have had the head and neck separate pieces, but whatever, it's fine. Giant exaggerated cape looks just like Todd McFarlane's art. Look at that, it's just spot on. Little sort of pointy shoulders. He's got the chain between 2 skulls. Then we have his outfit. Now, there's no articulation break here. I remember Todd McFarlane sort of fought articulation for so long because he thought it made the figures look worse, but they're so much more enjoyable. The modern Spawn line has something broken up here, but I really don't mind that much. The chest being one solid piece. Everything else is really the same articulation we're used to nowadays. Well, that's a lie. I'll go into that a little more depth later in the video. More chains down here, pouches, sort of utility thigh belt. The spikes, remember the original Spawn, they didn't match. Always one side was bigger than the other. It just seemed to get more and more exaggerated over the years. His cape is also absolutely fantastic. Hard plastic, and it's articulated. It can stretch out so far. That's why I think a Batman figure like this would be awesome. But this Spawn is top notch. It's going to be my go-to Spawn moving forward. And then here's the figure, broken down as far as he can go with all of his removable parts detached. Now for his accessories. Let's start off with his hands. He has a total of 6 of them, 3 right hands and 3 left hands. Here's his first pair of hands. They look like I can only describe as pinching hands. I believe they're gripping hands with a trigger finger. Here's his second pair of hands. This is a pair of gripping hands. And then his third pair of hands. These look like some open, clawing, grabbing, choking, or throwing hands. Now let's check out his heads. He has 2 of them, one with the mask on and one unmasked. Here's his first head. This one has the traditional Spawn look. And here's his alternate head. This is the sort of burnt, decrepit, dead Al Simmons head. He's screaming in pain or agony. Here are his regular weapons. We have a giant, oversized gun. It's got a baton on it, what looks like a grenade launcher, machine gun. Sculpt is fantastic. Different colors. Decent paint job. Then we have this sort of spiked club hook thing. 2 really cool weapons. Here's Spawn holding that first weapon, and then holding his second weapon, his machine gun, which he can hold with either one hand or with 2. And then we have his energy weapons or effects. Some energy that'll attach. You can hold it. It looks like it's going to be coming out of his hands. It's cast on a semi-transparent green plastic. Then we also have this knife. A little bit warped from the package. Should be easy to fix. These could also work for maybe Green Lantern constructs in your DC world. Here's Spawn holding that knife. And then here, holding that energy effect. Looks like he's got energy coming right out of his hand. They've released some similar effects with the modern Spawn figures. I think it looks pretty cool. Would have been nice if he had 2 of these, one for each hand. Now they've taken a pretty good look at both the figure and his accessories. Let's check out his height. This is advertised to be 7-inch scale Spawn figure. From bottom to top of the head, standing about 7.25 inches tall, which can translate to about 18.5 centimeters. If you go to the tallest point, his cape or, sort of collar, about 8.4 inches tall. And I would measure the width of the cape at its longest point, slightly more than 11 inches wide. And now for his articulation, which I'm extremely curious to dig in deep to. So we have his cape here. The cape is articulated, which is absolutely fantastic and unprecedented. It's hinged here. You can go back about that far and forward that much. You can sort of close it around him, not as much as I would have liked. So you can close it about that much, and it does sort of resist a little bit. You can open it wide, and you could have it back, but that's just kind of dumb. But that looks magnificent, and that does too. It'd be nice if it could sort of just completely shut over him. That looks really good right there, but if you let go, it kind of pushes itself back out. And for the rest of the figure, and to my surprise, the head and neck are 2 separate pieces. I just don't particularly like the way that it connects in there. It leaves a big gap. But the head can rotate independently. You can kind of see that. It's difficult. You almost have to pull the head off if you want to sort of change it, but the head can go up and down. As you can see, pretty decent amount. Can rotate, and that's without the neck. You can also do it with the neck. So, pretty nice, although a little bit hard to use without pulling the head off, getting the head the way you want it, putting it back on. Shoulders, they go out about this far, really obstructive from the cape. And that's been the biggest negative things I read, was the cape really prohibits a figure from utilizing his full potential. They go forward, that's it, about this far, not even full 90 degrees out. He does have a single jointed elbow, goes in about 90 degrees, and it does have rotation. His wrists can rotate, and they're hinged. His torso is one solid piece, ball joint the waist, rotate around, forward and back. For some reason, I was expecting just a regular waist swivel, or maybe even that whole thing to be one solid piece. As you go further down, the legs, they're sort of the newer style McFarlane joints. Rotation is decent. They go forward pretty far, back not too much, out all the way. Does have double jointed knees. And then his ankles, forward and back. Rotate, well, it's rotating up here. Can also rotate inside there. Tilt, rock, and to articulation. So I'd say from the waist down, it's everything from the modern Spawn and DC Multiverse line. And from the waist up, a little bit more limited as far as no torso cut. The neck's a little bit different, the elbows, and the cape restricting quite a bit of stuff. Still, it's a beautiful figure and far more articulated than I expected based off what I'd read. And all three of these figures have pretty much the same height and articulation, so I'll be passing that on the other two figures. Here's the second Spawn figure. This is the Unmasked Spawn, and it's on a little bit more modern body. Comes with similar but different accessories, the same 6 hands, 2 unmasked heads, 2 energy effects that are different, and a gun that's different, and then the same little hook thing. Well, starting with his face here, it looks grotesque. It's burnt, decrepit, stitched up, looks like a zombie, green glowing eyes, magnificent sculpt. Look at the texturing on his big, giant, exaggerated collar and the cape. Looks great. I'm sure a lot of the parts are shared. This part's new, the big armored spike thing on his hand. Still has the chain on both things. But a lot less red here. It's more the modern look where it's black and white. Let's go further down. Like I said, they just really kept making this bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. They never matched. Just one of the signature thing of Spawn. The cape looks to be the exact same design. Totally shut it. Open it. He looks great. Weird. I'm guessing you can swap heads and put the other head on this guy. I'll check that out in a moment. And a closer look at his face and head sculpt, which is very well done, but they kind of make it so you have to have sort of looking to the side. And there's always that big gap down there. If you want to minimize the gap, it's really the best you can get is sort of like this. If you want looking straight at you, the neck sort of ends up being lopsided. I don't know. The other one was like that too, the unmasked one. But it does look fantastic. And here's this figure with all of his removable parts detached. Now for his accessories. I don't think I need to go over the hands. They're exactly the same as the other ones. But let's look at his heads. He has 2 of them. They're both unmasked. Here's his first head. This one is stitched up, decrepit. It looks like a zombie. It looks evil. Here's a second head. This one is an unmasked Al Simmons head, and it's not all decrepit and gross looking. It's a fairly clean, normal one. And to answer my question earlier, yes, you can swap heads. You can put these unmasked, damaged, or clean head onto the OG Spawn, or you can put the masked head onto this modern Spawn. It looks great either way. Now, I guess one complaint I would have, I wish I had 2 of the masked heads so you could display both of them that way. Here are his 4 different weapons. We have the same spiked club hook thing. We have a different kind of large exaggerated gun. It looks very cool. It's got a drum here, a rocket launcher, all kind of different stuff going on. Another green energy knife, a little bit different than the other one. And another energy effect, also a little bit different than the other one, but I guess this gives me 2, so I can put one in either hand, even though they're not exactly the same. Here he is, holding that spiked club hook thing. Here he is, holding that large, exaggerated weapon, signature to the Spawn comics. Just like the other one, he can hold it with either 1 or 2 hands. And here, with the energy effects, the knife, and the energy sort of wrapped around his hand, looks like it's coming out. He's not actually holding onto it. I think this one is done sort of better. It does fall out easier, but you don't have to put that thing all the way in his hand. And of course, the little green knife. Here's the third Spawn figure. This is the Unpainted Artist-Proof Spawn. I believe it's the same sculpt as the OG Spawn. He has a very large sword, the same club hook thing, and then 2 energy effects. 2 heads, the same 6 hands. So let's take a look. Start with his face. I assume it's the regular Spawn. That's what it looks like to me, the mask on. But whole thing is just sort of dull, unpainted. I mean, you can really appreciate the texturing on the sculpt and all that stuff, but this is more of a collector item. You're not really going to put them in a bunch of different action figure displays and action figure photography. Same chain, skulls, all the same joints, articulated cape. It's cool. Not nearly as cool as the first two, but definitely cool. And a closer look at his face and head sculpt. You can really appreciate the sculpt when they're unpainted like this, but it doesn't look nearly as good as the painted version. Here's the figure with all of his removable parts detached. Now for the accessories. He has the same hands as the first release. He has the same heads as the first release. Let's check those out. Here's the first head. This one has the mask on. And here's the second head. This one has the mask off. Here's weapons. Giant sword. Giant club. And then an energy effect. An energy knife. Here's Spawn, holding that club thing. And then here, holding that sword, which you can hold with one or two hands. Here's Spawn with those two energy weapons. Surprised they're not done in gray plastic. So the knife, and then this energy effect that sort of attaches to the front of his hand. Here's a look at this Kickstarter Spawn in a cemetery under the moonlight. Now let's check them out. Next is some of their action figures, starting off with some of their Spawn figures. So back in the mid-90s, the Spawn figures were about 5.5 inches tall. McFarlane really sort of paved the way for the current 6-inch scale action figures. But before they ended, they made some 7-inch scale figures. Here he is. Next to all the older 7-inch scale Spawn figures that I have in my collection, we have Terry, Al Simmons' friend, then Al Simmons as a soldier, a couple Wanda figures, and a clown, Violator. Let's start off by checking him out with some of my favorite modern Spawn figures. Here he is, next to the Mortal Kombat 11 Spawn. This came out before Spawn had its own new 7-inch line, a way for them to test the waters, and the demand was unprecedented. This thing sold out everywhere. It was really hard to get. They released at least 3 different versions with different weapons, and you will never find this thing at retail nowadays. And here he is, next to the Mortal Kombat 11 Shadow of Spawn. Also a very nice Spawn figure. A little bit more of the classic look. Then, next to the Throne Spawn figure, this is another really nice Spawn figure. The only thing holding back is that it only has part of a cape. And now, next to the McFarlane DC Multiverse Batman and Spawn 2-pack Spawn. This is my favorite Spawn figure, and I thought the cape was restricting on this guy. Well, he has been dethroned. This Kickstarter Spawn is my favorite Spawn figure, and his cape is far more restricting. Here would be my 5 favorite McFarlane Spawn figures. They're all fantastic. Each and every one is worthy of an 8 out of 10, if not higher. Here are all the different Spawn figures based off his different various skins and appearances in the Mortal Kombat 11 game. There's some really nice figures and a lot of variation here. Here he is, next to a couple of weird paint variants of Spawn figures. We have the Sketch Throne Spawn, and then the black and white accent Shadow Spawn. Here he is, next to the recent King Spawn. And here, next to the original Concept Spawn. Then, next to some 30th anniversary McFarlane Spawn figures. Here's this Kickstarter Spawn, next to a bunch of different modern Spawn villains. And here, next to several different Spawn villain mega figures. Here he is, next to the Batman and Spawn 2-pack Batman and Spawn figures. They need to make a Batman with a giant articulated cape like this, even if it's hard plastic and restricting. Here he is, next to She-Spawn, and here, next to a Todd McFarlane figure. This is part of the Spawn line as well. And speaking of making Batman figures with a giant cape like this, not exactly the same thing, but here he is next to the Year 2 Batman, based off the art by Todd McFarlane, with those giant, long, exaggerated capes. But we need a Batman that doesn't just have the cape surrounding him like this, but is outstretched and articulated. Now let's check him out. Next is some action figures from different various companies, so we can see how he fits in, both scale and style-wise. In case you don't know which lines you can mix him with, since he's a McFarlane toy, they're typically the 7-inch scale. I'm going to start off my comparisons with some of the larger action figure lines I collect, and work my way smaller. But first, let's check him out with some of his McFarlane Toys brothers. In front of you are 5 different action figure lines, all from McFarlane Toys, all 7-inch scale. And now, with some Jack-specific wrestling figures and some Diamond Select toys. Here's a Kickstarter Spawn, next to an Onion. And here he is, next to some DC Direct and NECA figures. Then, with both some Mattel and Jazzwares wrestling figures. And now, with some Mezco and Mattel DC figures. Next, with some Mafex and Hasbro Marvel Legends. And finally, with some SH Figure Arts and Jazzwares Fortnite figures. So overall, this Kickstarter Spawn is absolutely fantastic. I'd say I like the OG one the most, followed by the more modern version, and it would really elevate this pack if they came with 2 regular heads. That way you could display them that way at the same time. A little bit disappointing that you have a total of 3 unmasked heads and 1 masked head between the OG and the modern version of Spawns. It's a minor complaint, but it definitely would make me enjoy these guys more, as that's how I want both of them to look on my shelf. The accessories are absolutely fantastic. Sculpt and paint job, great. Articulation, man, it's a little bit on the limited side, but this figure's not new. It's 4 years old at this point, and it was sort of a test to see if people were interested in a Spawn line. And they were, and they improved on the articulation. The packaging, top notch, all the extras are great. If I were to rate the set, easy 8.5 out of 10. Now, the actual figure has some flaws. Mainly, the articulation is a little bit limited, and the cape limits it even more. There's that little gap between the neck piece and the chest. Very noticeable. The cape could function a little bit better. I wish it would stay shut a little bit more. But it just looks so damn good. Like I said, I give the entire set 8.5 between the packaging, the presentation, the contents. But each of the individual figures, probably give the main one an 8. The modern one, probably going to bump him down to a 7. If he had the regular Spawn head, he'd easily also be an 8. And yeah, you could put this one on that one, but then you sacrifice this one being able to look that way. And the gray one, I'll bump him down to a 6 because it's just not nearly as fun. Plain, gray, boring, and unpainted. This set is fantastic. In some ways, I wish I'd gotten it years ago. Well, I definitely wish I had joined the Kickstarter from the beginning, but I didn't. But I kind of wish I tracked this down a long time ago, because these figures are way nicer than I expected. But at the same time, I got it for free just now, so, sometimes waiting pays off. I feel very fortunate to have been able to get this with reward points, and the fact that there was only one of them there makes it even that much more special. So this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say about the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional action figure reviews from me, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. Once again, this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll talk to you guys real soon.